Welcome back to the Untangled podcast, where we explore how plausible an obscure alternative reality really is. Today, we're taking a close look at some of our favorite movies, the Star Wars series. As we all know, where something popular exists with a massive fan base, there will surely be conspiracies. So today, let's prep those hyperspace drives and hone our force abilities as we explore the less plausible side surrounding the Star Wars franchise. And, as always, before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment. We appreciate any support. Thanks. Welcome back, everybody, to this beautiful episode of our little podcast here. Han, do you want to do the honors? Do you want to ask me to introduce myself this time? Because I always ask you to do so.
Well, Simon, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Han. I thought you'd never ask. So, as people know, I'm Simon. I'm 24, I believe. I am, yes. And yeah, I live in Brussels now. I work here. And I do a conspiracy podcast together with my friend and a guest every time. Joining us today, in addition to my friend Han, is Sav. Sav, tell us about yourself. Who are you? How do you find yourself here today? How excited are you to be conspiratorial?
Hi, I'm Sav. I find myself here today through bribery and coercion by Simon. I'm joking. Or is that another conspiracy for another time?
That's the last one, I think, can come back and explain how Simon coerced them.
Listen, that has to be the final episode of how I was coerced to get here. But I'm Sav. I am a fourth-year political science student at the University of Waterloo. I'm 22, and I'm currently situated in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Interesting. And in the middle of a snowstorm, they say.
Yes, a very, very promisingly bad snowstorm.
Nice. Anyway, Han, you're last. You get to introduce yourself again, too.
Of course.
Who are you?
Hi, guys. I'm Han. You know me from the previous podcast, if you've listened to those. I'm 24. I live in the Netherlands. I study international relations. And yeah, that's about it. Doing podcasts.
Yeah, cool. So I know there's a snowstorm going outside of you, Sav. So let's say it's a cold day, a nice wintry day. You don't want to go out. You just want to curl up inside. You got nothing to study for. You just throw on Netflix. You throw on Disney Plus, whatever. What are you watching? What's your go-to thing of choice?
Recently, I've been watching a lot of Dragon's Den. I watched the British one and I watched the Canadian one. I do not like Shark Tank, which is the American one, and I think there's an Australian Shark Tank as well. But I've been watching a lot of Dragon's Den.
Ooh, I always used to think Dragon's Den was Canadian because I swear it started before Shark Tank, but I'm pretty sure it's British.
Yeah, so the British
confusing.
one... No, actually, I think it was the Dutch one that started first, and then it was the British one, and then it was the Canadian one. I'm pretty sure it's something like that.
Can you confirm, Han?
I don't know this program.
You don't know Dragon's Den?
Dragon's Den.
Oh, I'm going to go Google now to see if it's the...
I'm also not very good at television shows, I'll be honest.
It's basically a show where like misguided entrepreneurs or failing businesses come on and pitch their company to some very egotistical business people, and they get to try to sell it. It's where Kevin O'Leary, the famous short bald guy.
Yeah, I do.
He's the most famous person I've ever laid eyes upon. Anyways, he's like
He's short in person. I've seen him in person tiny. Too. Yeah, I was taller than him.
Well, I mean, beyond TV shows, this is not the segue I was hoping for, Sav, here.
Sorry.
Beyond TV shows, what movies do you like?
It's actually, just to stick it in between, it's actually a Japanese program called Mane no Tora, which means the Tiger of Malaya.
Oh.
Tigers of Money is what it is.
Are we talking about the same thing here? I guess so.
Interesting.
Cool.
Well, now I know.
I watched the Japanese one.
Okay, Sav. This segue is not going very well, but I'll point you right now. If you're going to point me to your favorite movie franchise of all time.
Star Wars, without a shadow of a doubt.
And do you remember when I first approached you about Conspiracy Podcast? You gave me a list of things you'd be interested in talking about.
Yes.
And that included Star Wars. So can you
Yes.
piece together where we're going today with this episode? Because you have no prior. I didn't tell you beforehand what we were doing.
I'm going to assume Dragon's Den.
I
And
It'd be a valuable
so
assumption.
close, so close.
All right, let's do some Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with Star Wars, Sav, and then I'll go to Han. And then, why are you such a big Star Wars fanatic?
Oh God, that's a loaded question. I don't know. I grew up with Star Wars. I'd seen the first. I begged my dad to let me watch Star Wars when I was about 6, and we binged them together in my grandparents' basement. We did 4, 5, 6, and this was when Revenge of the Sith was coming out. So we did 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3 after they were finally released on DVD. And then, yeah, I fell in love with Star Wars. And then with Star Wars came this TV series called Star Wars The Clone Wars, which was an animated series. And I was about 8 when that came out. And it was the first time that they actually had a female Padawan into Jedi as a forefront of the story in Star Wars, and I related to that character a lot, and in a lot of ways I grew up with the character, so I feel like Star Wars has been very integrated into my life just from childhood, and it's an amazing series too, politically, spiritually. It covers a lot of topics, so yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. 'Cause I feel like for a lot of people, it's been a big childhood kind of thing. Because it's always been, I've always viewed it as more of like a mythical kind of series. Because I feel like when you actually watch the movies, there's so much extra loaded context to everything that it just stands out in some senses.
Yeah, I feel like, watching it as a kid, I watched it because I loved the action. I loved, like the lightsabers and the ships and like all the kind of like stuff that kids are really supposed to like grab to, which is the demographic that they're going after. But then as I've gotten older and I've understood a little bit more of like the political connotations to what's going on and the concept of the Force and where that was derived from and all these kind of bigger kind of like issues, if you will, or factors that has made me love Star Wars into my adulthood.
What about you, Han? Is your background as romantic as it sounds?
Yeah, I was just gonna go there. No, it isn't. It's much less romantic. It does for me stem from childhood because I'm slightly older than you, Sav. So for me, I saw Attack of the Clones in the cinema. That was the first one I saw, and I loved it because it was people in bathrobes doing backflips with shiny swords. Which, I mean, I think it was like 4 or 5 at the time. And you got to love that. It's just too much fun to see them do the flips. Even though I watch it now and I'm like, this is so over the top. And like a lot of the animation is not that great. But as a kid, I just enjoyed the hell out of it. So I used to then like get all the toys and stuff and like get all these figures and get these plastic lightsabers, which were totally not as cool as I thought they would be because they were way too big for me. Like I couldn't hold them in my hand, and then I was like, "No, I can't play with this. This is terrible." So yeah, for me, Star Wars is just one of those things that is very much integrated with my childhood. And as I got older, I kind of saw, at least for the first movies, I saw kind of the cultural impact of it. Because the first Star Wars movie was probably like one of the first actual big blockbusters. That it's insane how big that movie was. Everybody saw that movie. Everybody. In 1977, this was like the first real blockbuster. So it's really cool to see how that translates to now, because my parents saw that in the cinema when they were like 20-ish, I think, which it's interesting to see how it's kind of skipped over generations or moved along with time. And now I watched it with my parents. So yeah, it's just a nostalgic thing combined with just the cultural impact, I suppose.
Yeah, because I was fairly late. I mean, it took me a while to see the Star Wars movies, but I've always been really fascinated by it because for me, the big avenue into it, weirdly enough, was kind of like Lego.
Oh yeah,
Lego Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because my parents never really showed us the movies until I was older. So my siblings grew up with it a lot more than I did. But it was always like the cool thing. And then the Legos, and then video games, and then finally
Oh, the
seeing
Lego
movies.
video games. How about
There you
that
go.
too, yeah.
Yeah. Played those a whole bunch.
On my PS2.
Yeah, first game I got on my PS2. Loved it.
I
Amazing.
still have really fond memories of just my brothers, and there are certain spots and certain maps where you can lay in such a way with a sniper rifle where you can pick off your, like my brother or another sibling of mine without getting shot yourself. And we had to ban those because, yes, but good memories.
I think that's Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
That was an awesome game too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That was awesome too. But no, the Lego one was fun because you could play it co-op, so I could play it with my neighbor. Yeah, we just kept killing each other and like running into stupid stuff. It's great fun. I played it with a friend recently again. It's still fun. It still holds up.
I have a PS4, and I always make sure I get the Star Wars Lego games because they're actually a lot of fun to play.
They are.
Speaking of things that might not hold up so well, Star Wars is a bit of a convoluted series. It has a lot of plot, a lot of expanded universe, a lot of details. And when you combine it with a rabid fan base of tons of people, many of whom are much bigger fans than us and dedicate much more of their lives to every nitpicky detail, there's bound to be some conspiracies that emerge, some things that don't add up, some things that don't align. And that's what we'll be talking about today.
Can I guess what one of the conspiracies is going to be?
I was going to segue that way into it, Sab. So
Okay.
go ahead. You're taking the words out of my mouth.
So one of the biggest conspiracies in Star Wars fandom is who shot first. And it's between Han and Greedo in the cantina on Mos Eisley. So I wonder if that's where we're going to go into.
Well, the way we're going to structure the episode today is a bit different than how we've structured our previous episodes, where we tend to just focus on one big theory and discuss every minute detail related to it. The way we're going to do here is more of a grab bag episode, which is a concept I think we'll play around a bit more with in the future as well, where we have several related smaller conspiracies. So we have a bunch of different Star Wars conspiracies lined up, and at the end of each little segment we're going to rate them how believable they are in the Star Wars universe.
Alrighty.
Han, do you want to kick us off? Maybe we should start with the theory that Sab was mentioning first.
We can do that.
Think?
We can definitely do that. Yes, you did guess correctly that we are going to talk about the infamous scene in the cantina. So just to explain to people who might not be as intimately familiar with it, in the first scene, I think, where we meet Han Solo,
Oh my gosh. It clued in with me. Han and Han Solo.
That was what my intro was going to be. I completely forgot about the excitement around our podcast.
Oh,
I was going to make fun of you having a name that's shared.
We could record at the end if you want.
Yeah, you can.
Fine.
I mean, you can do it. You're gonna be one of like a million people that have done that. So go ahead. Original.
I will
Daring.
have to say Han is it's really weird how that very Dutch name ended up in this very somewhat American movie.
It does. I honestly don't know why that happened, but yeah, I should look that up at some point. Actually, they stole my name.
Maybe because your parents saw it before you were conceived. Maybe you stole his name.
No, I was named after an uncle who was born way before Star Wars. So check and made, Simon.
Well, who shot first? Who knows?
Well, let's talk about that. All right. So
that would have been a good start.
Damn it. All right, we're going to talk about the famous who shot first scene in the cantina. So Han Solo is introduced as this dashing rogue kind of character who doesn't play by the rules, and you're not quite sure of what his motivations are. So when we encounter him, he's in a cantina and he gets held up by this green alien type of guy who's a bounty hunter. His name is Greedo. And he talks in this weird language that nobody really understands. So yeah, he basically tells Han, look, you messed up. There's a big bounty on your head, which I'm going to collect. And also I hate you. So I would love to kill you right now. And then Han Solo basically shoots him and kills him. Or did he? And this is quite a point of debate because there are two versions of this movie. Actually, there are multiple versions of this movie. So in the first official version in 1977, the scene is quite ambiguous. You can see Han Solo sitting in front of the green alien, and there's this blaster sound as Han Solo, you see Han Solo grabbing his gun as the alien is holding his gun across the table, and then you hear this blaster sound, and all you see is this alien exploding. You don't actually see any gunfire or anything. You just see the alien exploding, and then Han Solo just gets up. And, yeah, that's a really cool scene. But for some reason, in the second edition of the movie in 2004, they added a scene in which they both shoot at each other, and you can see Greedo shooting and missing Han Solo, and they both shoot at roughly the same time. So it kind of takes out the ambiguity which was there, and a lot of people got very pissed off about it because they saw, all right, this is neutering the Han Solo character. Han Solo was really cool because like he's established as this badass who could actually be quite ruthless and just straight up kill a guy in a bar, which is pretty rough. So, Sav, who do you think shot first?
I'm going to start this by saying, as a Star Wars fan, this is a conspiracy that I really I really didn't give a fuck about. And I say that in the most respectful way possible because I never understood why people were so obsessed with who shot first. But if I
if Han shot first, he's a cold-blooded murderer.
Yeah.
If
basically.
he's not shot at, there's
But
he doesn't
either
have a
way,
reason to shoot.
Either way, it's supposed to be like, well, a lot of inspiration is derived from like Western films, right? Like this kind of cowboy-esque, guns blazing, quick shot, boom, right? So he's a cold-blooded killer, if in that sense, either way, right? This is by virtue of who these people are. They're bounty hunters, right? They're mercenaries. So I don't know, like I don't really care, but if I'm strictly looking at the photo that's in front of me, it would be pretty obvious to me that Greedo looks like the one who shot first.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, so I can totally see where you're coming from because I don't really care about the whole scene either, but what I do find interesting is that they added a scene 27 years later to establish that Han didn't shoot first, even though it's a kind of a strange scene because they both shoot at like a millisecond after each other, which is just a crazy reaction time. And the bounty hunter guy, who's supposed to be a trained killer, he does this for money, just shoots him, just misses him at point blank range, which is just dumb.
Well, Han moves in the actual scene. You see Han move slightly.
He moves slightly, but I mean, are we thinking, does Han Solo, can he dodge a bullet at point blank range? Because that's also insane.
But is that more because Han has been in this world for how many ever years and is a smart guy as it's being established here that he knows what's coming? And
what about Greedo? I always thought Greedo was an older guy. He never struck me as a young one.
I mean, I don't doubt it. I think it just more speaks to the skill of Han Solo as a bounty hunter, or not as a. He was more of a smuggler in that kind of, like, it just is a bad dude in that world, right? So I think either way, it's establishing Han as being a smart guy who's pretty skillful and who can shoot people, right? Fair enough. Gets the job done.
I'll now move to the actual conspiracy theory, which is my personal little theory. I'm pretty sure this might have been said before, but I came up with this on my own, and it doesn't make any sense, but it's much more in line with the conspiracy theme. So in the script of the actual movie, it was supposed to be ambiguous who shot first, because you hear a shot and then Greedo explodes. So it doesn't really matter who shot first, because like Greedo dies. You don't even hear two shots. So for some reason, George Lucas thought it was necessary to change it so that Han shot second and they both shoot at each other, so he had more of a cause to shoot him. So why would he do that? And this is where my conspiracy comes in. You see, George Lucas, he's a pretty old dude. Like, this is 2004, right? He's nearing. I think he's almost finished the prequel trilogy. He's kind of old. He's gotten a lot of crap over him, especially for the first two prequel movies, because like people really hated those in the beginning. So he's like, I want to get out of this whole business. I just want to retire on a big yacht and have fun and just chill out, you know? So, but a lot of his money is going to be in LucasArts, right? Because that's his company. So what he wants is to sell that company. And who would he like to sell it to? Who's got money?
Disney.
Exactly. And what kind of company is Disney? What kind of characters do they like to produce?
Mickey Mouse.
and
Children's.
Yes, exactly. And would Mickey Mouse shoot someone in cold blood?
Debatable. Not in the modern era.
Exactly. So here's my conspiracy theory, which I am dreaming up, is that he deliberately made this scene so that Han Solo would be more kid-friendly, because he's more of a heroic type if he doesn't just outright shoot him. And then he's more of a Disney character.
Is The Lion King Disney?
Yes.
So the role of Scar and essentially killing Mufasa is quite graphic, and then you see Simba crying out for his father and seeing him die in front of him, which also goes back to Star Wars connection because of James Earl Jones voicing Mufasa, and who also voices Darth Vader. So I think that that's a pretty heavy scene for Disney to have partaken prior to 2004, right? Because The Lion King came out in the late 90s.
Yeah,
It did.
Or so.
I get where you're coming from. However, Bambi is pretty graphic too, by the way, because Bambi's mom dies, and it's just traumatic. It's horrifying. Anyway, Disney has a big thing for dead parents. Just look at Disney movies and see how many people, like how many main characters are not orphans. It's insane. There's like maybe
true, fair
5
enough.
or something. But
I do get your point of the conspiracy of the maybe there was a part of George Lucas that wanted to have Han have more of a redeeming quality to him. So it made sense that like, oh, if Han shoots second, then he's just reacting to someone trying to kill him, and this can be kind of like a redeeming quality. But like, I don't know if it's as methodical as George Lucas put this in place so that Disney could buy Star Wars, because irrespective of this being done or not, Star Wars and Lucasfilms was worth a fuck ton either way.
That's true.
Han, did you hear the other conspiracy that was kind of more meta? I didn't put in the list because I didn't want to go too meta. But there was this theory that LucasArts was actually bought by Disney in the 1970s, but they didn't make the purchase public or official until like the late 2000s to avoid becoming too monopolistic or something like that. Or no, to better fit in with their less PG standards.
That's a pretty crazy one.
I heard something sort of like that. I don't know if it was the same along the lines that there was a previous deal for Disney to purchase Lucasfilms prior. I don't know when that occurred, but what it is interesting is that Toy Story that was made by... Who made Toy Story? Yeah, Pixar. So Pixar was created as a subsidy of Lucasfilms and around the Star Wars time frame, and they started out as just purely technology based. So it was a subsidy of Lucasfilms that went spiraling off into its own thing and then was eventually sold to Disney. So there is a bit of a connection there.
I actually didn't know that it was a Lucasfilm thing. I thought it was just a company in and of itself. Crazy. I thought
it had a Steve Jobs connection too. That was the only other thing I knew about Pixar.
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about Steve Jobs because that's going to cost your job, right?
Sorry. Go on, Han. Go on.
Yeah, no. So that's my little theory, because I thought the hand shot first theory was pretty lame in and of itself as well. I just feel like there's might be more behind the reason why they decided to change it, because it's kind of a weird change to make. It doesn't really make that much sense. Unless you look at it from a money perspective.
So I guess to wrap it up, from everything that Han has said, 10 being completely true, or no, 1 being completely true, and 10 being completely false, where do you stand on this, Sav, really quick?
Where do I stand on what?
So, on this theory.
But what's the theory? Or is it who shot first, or is it
Let's
Han's
say
theory?
Han shot first, but got switched by Lucasfilms to make themselves more profitable.
Oh, I'm going to say that is a 3, 2, 2 or
I'll
3.
take it. I'll take it.
So, very unbelievable, or very believable.
I can kind of see where it comes from, but I'm not there.
Okay. I could believe it, except I just feel like George Lucas is a weird guy, and I feel like he had much bigger reasons to change his films rather than getting an extra billion or so.
Yeah.
Because I think once you have basically guaranteed 1 or 2 billion in the bank, another 1 or 2 doesn't make that big of a difference.
Yeah, that's not quite true if you look at the kind of yachts that are being made. 1 or 2 billion could be the difference between a 20-story yacht and a 30-story yacht.
I see where your aspirations lie, Han.
All I'm saying
first, right?
All I'm saying is that once money works in echelons, right? Once you get to a next level, there's always like another one above you. Yeah. I'm nodding vigorously, by the way. You can't see me, but I am.
Okay, we'll take your word for it. Sav, do you know any other Star Wars conspiracies? Maybe we touched on 1 or 2 more.
I feel like I do. None are coming to mind right now.
Oh, I can rehearse your memory a little, or whatever you call it. Shake your memory? Speed up your memory?
Jog my memory?
Jog memory. I knew it was something with... Yeah. So, yeah. Are you guys familiar with how inaccurate stormtroopers are in shooting their weapons?
Yes.
Okay, so some people are really fanatics and counted how accurate stormtroopers were overall in every Star Wars movie. So, for instance, in A New Hope, they fired 404 shots, and out of those 404, they got 10 hits, which is a 2.47% accuracy, which is kind of embarrassing. It's even worse in The Empire Strikes Back, where they fired 104 shots with 1 hit, which is a 0.96% accuracy. Pretty stellar numbers. I think the best movie they said was Rogue One, but from 806 shots, which is a pretty impressive number, they had 80 hits for 9.92% accuracy. Although certain Death Troopers in the movie had a higher accuracy, because I guess they're more specialized, but... So I'm going to ask you two, why do you think stormtroopers are so bad at shooting their guns, which is basically their only purpose in this life they were given?
I was going to say, I don't know, probably like their uniform and their helmets and stuff. Probably can't actually see out of those things, so that and to drive the plot forward so that your favorite heroes can survive.
I mean, some valid points. The helmet one is something that's floated around. I think one of the Clone Wars episodes actually referenced it, where I think one of the clones put on a helmet and he's like, I can't see through this. Throws it off and he gets like 10 headshots or something like that.
It's actually the series that came after Clone Wars in which they did that.
Yeah, Rebels.
Yeah.
I did not know, but I knew it was one of the animated products. But helmets is not going to be the one of the key conspiracies I lean on. I have 2 that I'm going to lean on. One is more believable. One is slightly more out there, but I can make a compelling case, as I always do, right, Han?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, you should have left it at the silence.
I was going to say. Anyways. So, I mean, to give it some context, in some senses, their 4% hit rate across all movies is not that terrible. Here's a cool historical trivia question. Some scholars estimated this, but in the Vietnam War, how many shots did the average American soldier fire before hitting a target?
Way more than in the Second World War, that's what I know.
Yes,
because they did start practicing on like pop-up thing, so it would be more of a reflex thing than an actual thought thing, because people would like instinctively shoot over the targets.
Yeah, but if you put a number to it, how many shots or rounds do you think a soldier would fire before they actually hit something in the Vietnam War?
Like 100.
20? Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
You went for 100, Han?
Yeah, 1% hit rate.
100 is a pretty... It's not high enough.
Oof.
Try one a bit higher.
500?
No, not even close.
Oh my god! All right,
What?
10,000.
You're getting warmer, but you're still not halfway there.
All right.
What the hell
What
are they
I
shooting at?
what I read, I don't know how reputable, but it seems reputable. I read that for every round they hit, they fired 50,000 rounds before hitting something, which
Oh my god!
makes sense because they were all stoned out of their minds because it was Vietnam and just shooting at random things and destroying forests in a country, basically.
Oh god.
So I don't know. Maybe this is somewhat accurate. I mean, it is more embarrassing, but who knows? But the explanation most people or most Star Wars conspiracists would say is, the main characters who they're always shooting at, they're mainly Luke, Leia, Obi-Wan, people like that who have Force powers. So the theory is you kind of like cloak them in the Force. So, the Force kind of protects them, makes them a bit harder to hit. And that's somewhat believable, or, the best evidence for it is actually in Rogue One, where they had the Force-sensitive guy, if you remember the blind guy. I believe his name was Shiru Imwe, as my notes would say, and he had the same,
The one with the staff, right? The blind
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force, and the
Exactly.
Force is with
Right.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the best evidence goes. He goes into the battlefield like that, and his buddy just gets shot right beside him, whereas he gets completely unscathed. So, the Force does do something. Would you believe that the Force can protect you from these blaster shots?
All right. So I like flipping it around and saying that stormtroopers are bad. So the good part of the Force just gives them bad juju, which always makes them shoot like this. I think
That could be
it's
one.
it's kind of a karma thing. If your karma is so bad, everything you do just goes wrong. Like every bowling ball, you just kind of skews to the left or something.
I feel like I'd support more of Han's perspective on that than the original
Wow.
one that was just given out, Simon.
You're really not going to like my second explanation by how this
No.
is going. Do you want to hear my second explanation? I refuse to tell Han this beforehand because I'm sure he'll love it.
All right.
So back on Tatooine, right? Luke's parents or Luke's adoptive family was Uncle Ben or some. Sorry,
Uncle Ben and Aunt Beru, or not Uncle Ben.
Uncle Owen.
And Luke,
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
and then he was told, with great power comes great responsibility, and then he became Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyways, the theory goes, Beru and Owen, you know how they got kind of murdered in the first movie, right?
Oh, they were toast.
Well, those were just bodies, right?
Crispy.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you identify that? It's just a body. The theory goes, two stormtroopers came over and two stormtroopers left, but the bodies were not Uncle Owen.
Oh no.
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. They managed to overpower these stormtroopers, climb to their outfits, and then secretly masquerade into the Empire. And then from within the Empire, they were in some scenes, and they made sure, not to aim too closely at Luke and Han during their escapades within the Death Star and stuff like that.
Are you suggesting that every like pair of stormtroopers that shot at Luke
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
was Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru?
I mean, you can't tell them apart, right? You can't say they weren't them.
But
It didn't sound like them.
What, from their footsteps?
No, they speak.
yeah, but that's through like a robot-y kind of voice modulator. So I can see that.
Yeah.
I can wave that, I suppose. But like sometimes they get shot at by 5 stormtroopers, or like more than 2. How do you explain that?
They just, act a bit clumsy. I mean, they do have a 4% hit rate, so.
Oh, what about this? What if it was Jar Jar Binks that was able to escape and then accidentally joined the Empire, and then was one of those stormtroopers who was clumsy, because we've seen the proof. Proof is in the pudding. He saves the day every time of being clumsy in the Clone Wars.
Is he though? We'll see.
Han,
That's the other conspiracy too, that Jar Jar is that something that we're
Yes,
getting to later?
we're going to get to that one. We're going to get to that one.
That's my favorite.
So, how would you rate you guys weren't too receptive to the Force one, but what about, Because, getting shot and being burned to a crisp, that's not a really sexy way to go out. This is a much nicer way to watch the Star Wars movies. Am I not correct? What would you rate this one? Believable? Not believable? Where do you fall?
For the first one, what was your first one? It was the
Force theory.
The Force protects you.
Oh, okay. If the first one is Han's theory, then I would give that like a 6 or a 7.
Oh.
But for your second theory, I would give that a 10 out of 10 for creativity.
Thank you.
Is it
Han,
possible?
where do you fall?
Is it possible to give minuses? Like the second one.
I think it's a good theory. You got it.
Right, let's go even further. If there's a group of stormtroopers, it's just because Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen actually went to Camino and cloned themselves.
Yeah.
So actually, Aunt and Uncle's Luke's aunt and uncle.
It's an army of Uncle Owens and Aunt Beru's.
Exactly, and they're just waiting for the right moment to strike. Except every time, like the Death Star gets blown up and they all die.
Jango Fett is no longer needed. Step aside.
Han, do you want to maybe jump to the next theory, the one Sav hinted at?
Yes. Well, let's get to it. So you already mentioned Jar Jar Binks and his his kind of crazy amount of luck. So basically, there's this theory that Jar Jar is not as innocent and clumsy and dumb as he might look like. That he actually might be something quite different, something a lot more sinister than what he lets on. I don't know. How much have you heard about this theory? Do you know it?
A lot, very well.
All right. So, all right, for the I'll explain it mostly for the audience then, because I feel like you'll know what I'm talking about. So, basically, there's 3 arguments that I have prepared here that Jar Jar is something much more than he actually lets on to be. The first argument is, well, as Saf said, is the uncanny amount of luck that the guy has. So this is a series in which people die, and like Greedo, they die. Their limbs get cut off, like, all the time. It's kind of crazy how much that happens. And Jar Jar just kind of gets off scot-free every time while being a complete idiot. Like, he just bumbles around and dodges blaster shots by tripping over things, and it's insane. It's also one of the reasons why people hated the first prequel movie as much, because he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, because he's just too comical to like be believable for Star Wars fans. So that's kind of crazy, right? Why would such a like almost Disney-esque cartoon character be in Star Wars? Well, there might be a good reason for it, because the uncanny luck might actually have to do with the fact that he is maybe a Force sensitive. He actually senses all the things that are happening, and he's actually dodging them on his own accord. He's not actually being clumsy, he's just pretending. Yeah. So, like I said, the first argument is that his luck is actually skill. So yeah, he's extremely lucky, which could hint at something more, because that kind of luck doesn't exist. Obi-Wan says it in the first movie that there is no such thing as luck. So Obi-Wan knew the guy. Maybe he knew what he really was. So the second argument is that Jar Jar is quite agile. Like, he can do a lot of crazy flips and jumps and shit, many of which we only see Jedi perform in the rest of the movie, as well as Sith. Dun, dun, dun.
Do you recall, Sab, the scene where he just jumps into the pond in the first movie?
Mm-hmm.
That is not a normal thing that things do, right?
No.
I'll refute that later.
You'll refute it later? Okay, I want to see one of his other species do that kind of little twirl thing. Like, even before he does it, I'm gonna point it out. He does like the little, praying hand.
And then it spins and then...
Yeah, that's for surely some kind of Force thing. Honestly.
Well, there's a good argument made that he's actually inspired, that his movement and like fighting style, quote unquote, is actually inspired by the drunken master style of combat, because he kind of sloshers around and then he centers himself, which they do as well. There's some clips on it, which I'm not going to show you, but you can look it up. Somebody spent a lot of hours into perfecting this theory. because he's kind of sloshing around like aimlessly, but that's just a ruse to misdirect. Actually, he's quite skilled and he's quite agile, and it's just a kind of fighting style. So that both of these things kind of suggest that he's a very skilled fighter, and he's also a Force sensitive. And finally, he's also good friends with Palpatine. Of course, like there's the one scene that he kind of hands supreme power to Palpatine. That's Jar Jar that does that. We're not even touching on the fact that Jar Jar became a senator that can do that. Like, this guy is a total idiot. Why do they do it? Like, the fact that he's such an idiot and he's managing to get into all these positions. Well, we've seen Jedi get into some people do some quite strange stuff for them just by a hand wave, So why wouldn't he be able to? So his connection with Palpatine is actually quite slightly deeper, because he's also from Naboo. Like, the Gungans are also from Naboo, so why would they not be hanging out sometimes? They're just Palpatine's on a stroll in the forest or something, and there's Jar Jar, and they're just talking. Nothing odd about it. The oddest thing about it maybe is the fact that, well, Palpatine gets supreme power in the second prequel movie, but he's still seen hanging out with Jar Jar in the third one. Like, why would he keep him around? He doesn't need Jar Jar anymore. Well, why would you keep that guy around? It's not going to look good. So
maybe you're just a bad friend, Han.
Well, why would he be friends with Jar Jar?
Wow, so rude. He's a human being. No, go on.
He's not a human being. Specifically.
Also, I was watching the first one too. Qui-Gon, I always say his name wrong, but Qui-Gon Jinn? Qui-Gon? Yeah. Sorry, I preface this by saying I always say it wrong. But he is so mean to Jar Jar, as in, like, he despises that creature. You can tell it from the way he grabs his tongue in midair, that kind of stuff. But yeah, sorry, go on, Han.
He knows that Jar Jar is a Sith. He's sensing it, and he doesn't actually he doesn't know for sure because his mind's being clouded. But he's got this primordial tinge that kind of alerts him to the danger. So of course we never see Jar Jar be a Sith Lord. It's all quite. Well, it doesn't really end up being anything. So do you know why that is, Sav?
Because everyone hated Jar Jar after The Phantom Menace.
Exactly. And George Lucas just chickened out of this whole crazy twist plan because, well, yeah, people hated Jar Jar. Like, how would people have reacted if Jar Jar was actually the bad guy?
I mean, I would have reacted better than to the 9th movie, so...
Yeah, I mean, the 8th movie really did it, but...
I haven't even seen the 9th one. I told this to Simon. I haven't even watched it because I just wanted... Like, I've never actually wanted to leave the cinema for a movie except for The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah. The Last Jedi, God, that's a whole other topic, but...
Yes.
You'll notice we purposely didn't do any sequel trilogy.
Oh, thank God, because I kid you not, when I think of Star Wars, I think of the original trilogy, the prequels, Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, and like all those types of iterations. I do not at all include the sequels as a part of that. Like, they are just cut off in my brain. I pretend like they never happened. It's like me with the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. I pretend that it never happened.
I was talking about the sequel trilogy with Simon, and I was actually saying, like, I could go on for hours about how bad I thought The Last Jedi was, and it's kind of in the same spot as season 8 of Game of Thrones. Like, those are the 2 things that I could talk.
Yeah.
I could fill probably a day of talking about it. I will not, but
I will defend Rogue One. That's my one thing.
I love Rogue One. I thought that Rogue One was a great film.
Same, yeah.
I thought Solo was shit, but the shittiest Star Wars film in the Disney era was Episode 8, like The Last Jedi. And
I thought 9 was worse. I will say that.
I thought that 9 was a combination. I think 9 was J.J. Abrams trying to clean up and do what should have been Episode 8 and Episode 9 into only Episode 9.
I think 9 would have been better if he just kept on doing what Rian Johnson was doing beforehand in number 8. It wouldn't have been a great movie, but it would have been better than the mess we got.
I just I think that there's some validity to that, but I think I'm very conflicted because when I saw The Force Awakens episode 7 for the first
Hmm.
time, I was like, wow, this is a great film. Like this is a great movie. But and I watched it like 5 times. But as I saw how the sequels progressed, I'm starting to realize that all of the problems from episode 8, not all, but the foundational problems from 8 and 9 stem from episode 7. And the problem is that it was just a reiteration of episode 4. There was nothing new to it. And what I didn't like is if at that point in episode 7 that there's now unbalance in the force, what the fuck was the point of 1 to 6, right?
Yeah.
Like what who like there we talk about this prophecy all along, right? The prophecy, the chosen one, blah 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 blah. And we finally see that resolve in episode 6 for there to be a sequel and then an unjust, unruly, bad power that now is destroying planets, and now there's another rebellion and blah 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 in the sequel series. It's just like what was the point of the original?
Well, you could say maybe they didn't defeat the original bad power in the original trilogy. You could say maybe there was some uber powerful Sith Lord that was introduced in the earlier movies that
Yes.
was George Lucas's plan all along to be killed off in the sequels.
Right. The balance will not be restored until Jar Jar is defeated. Darth Jar Jar.
Fair enough. We'll center
Just
this back around Jar Jar,
yes,
shall
we'll
we?
center it before we get into an hour-long rant about how shit the sequels were, because I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
that's a rabbit hole we don't want to dive into if like we ever want to quit, like end this
true.
podcast on a note. But just to finish the Darth Jar Jar theory off, there is a quote from George Lucas about Yoda in the first movies, because you remember how Yoda was kind of kooky when he was first introduced, like he was laughing
Yeah.
and beating his stick and just being kind of odd, and then he became really profound. So he said, Yoda really comes from a tradition in mythological storytelling and fairy tales of the hero finding a little creature on the side of the road that seems very insignificant and not very important, but who turns out to be the master wizard or the master thing. So Jar Jar is pretty much found by the wayside in the first movie. Like they just run into him and he's being run over by like droid stuff. So would he just be there for comic relief as happened now, or would he actually serve a greater purpose? I don't know.
And it's a good parallel. You know, George Lucas was all about parallels between his two trilogies. I think it really works well.
I okay. So I am strongly like no, like this is no, but I can see how this could have developed into something else. And I think that there has been, I don't know if this is fact, but apparently George Lucas has confirmed, allegedly, that Jar Jar Binks was supposed to be a Sith. But I don't know how true that is. But if you're like, everything makes sense in the sense of like, okay, like Palpatine might have orchestrated Jar Jar to fuck over the Gungans, to create a divide in Naboo, and to be there to make sure that all this shit happened and all this kind of whatever happened. Cool. That makes sense. Where everything just kind of like falls apart for me is just Jar Jar as a character. Like, there's no doubt that like Jar Jar could be someone who is skillful in the art of fighting and all that kind of stuff, who could have force sensitivities, but that doesn't mean that he's a Sith. And I think it goes back to the original point, which I think Hans said, was that, you know, there's no such thing as luck, right? Like everything is controlled by the force. And I think that's proper though, right? It's the same with Jar Jar. Jar Jar can still be this clumsy, skillful, maybe force sensitive Gungan, but it doesn't mean that like, he's a Sith. He was placed there from the Force in order to to drive the story forward, right? To then eventually go and find Anakin on Tatooine, for all of that to drive forward. I think that was really dictated by the Force, but does that mean that he was a Sith? I don't know.
I'm more sympathetic towards this one, just because I think George Lucas just screwed up in making him too hateable. Because I really do see the rhythm or the symmetry between the Yoda character and the Jar Jar Binks character. Just they're complete opposites polarly in kind of like personality, physical looks, etc., etc. And I do think there's a really good symmetry there. And the quotes there, I know. My conspiratorial mind is, it's running in high gear, right?
It's hard for me too, because a lot of what the character of Jar Jar is predicated on is a lot of like racial stereotypes about black individuals, and we shouldn't forget that Ahmed Best is the actor who was behind Jar Jar, who faced unspeakable racism, and who I think has been very open about his struggles with his mental health coming out of Star Wars, and especially too, like he went into a very deep, serious depression after. So because of that, also, that leads me to believe that there wasn't a seriousness associated with Jar Jar Binks.
On the other hand, you could say Yoda was also based on Asian stereotypes. So I just think George Lucas isn't the greatest person per se.
Oh, I agree. I
He didn't have a faux Jamaican accent, which was just I mean, but another point that speaks for the Darth Jar Jar theory is the fact that Count Dooku was just kind of there in the second movie. Just like, and there's another guy with a red lightsaber, and he just got a little bit of backstory, and we're just gonna plunk him there. He was kind of introduced haphazardly to cover up for the fact that the main bad guy they were going to face at that point was actually hated so much that they feared it might just blow up the entire movie if they went along as planned.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense too, especially because Darth Maul, well, allegedly, but we know now it's not true, dies in episode 1.
Becomes much cooler. He's so much cooler in Clone Wars. He actually gets to
and
talk.
The rule, yeah, I love. This is why I love the Clone Wars, so they do so much more digging into like a whole bunch of shit. But oh fuck, what was I gonna say? I was saying Darth Maul. Oh, the rule of two. So the rule of two. There's a master, and then there's the apprentice. And so it would make sense that at the end of episode 1, when Darth Maul dies, that the apprentice is now dead. Then it becomes Count Dooku in the second and third films, and then Count Dooku dying at the beginning of the third film. And then Anakin, then Darth Vader taking that spot at the end of the third film. But then I would ask the question is, what happens to Jar Jar at the end of Revenge of the Sith if we are abiding by the rule of 2?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That I feel like that's a question we're probably sadly never gonna have answered. What would Jar Jar have done? Would we have seen some epic fight between Jar Jar and Yoda, as we would have seen, like as we saw Yoda versus Count Dooku? That would have been some nice symmetry, Simon.
Yeah. Because I feel like to some extent you could have perhaps just answered it by saying instead of Dooku, it would have been Jar Jar. And maybe Jar Jar would have gone like decapitated or something in the first movie instead. But
like Jar Jar had to be if this was true, like Jar Jar had to be expendable at some point within from 1 to 3. But I think it's also interesting that could lead into the same conspiracy that, oh gosh, now I'm flip-flopping and being a hypocrite now.
Go for it.
That if Jar Jar was a Sith, that it makes sense that we have not seen him in any iteration of Star Wars that has come after Episode 3. So we have not seen him in Rebels. I don't believe he was spotted in Rogue One. He was not spotted in the sequel series. He was not spotted in the original trilogy. He's not spotted in The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Maybe.
Time is on his side. Yeah.
I'm coming around a little bit, but not fully.
It's a good theory. They put some work into it. Whoever came up with it.
Should we give a quick ranking and move on to what will probably be one of our final theories? Because
Yeah.
we're running a bit short on time. But
All right, I'll give this a quick. I'll give it a 6. It intrigues my interest, but I don't, 6 or 5. Intrigues me, but I don't know.
I'll give it like a good, I think an 8. I want this one to be true, just because
That's bad.
I like having purpose to things, and I think giving Jar Jar a good purpose is good. It would really, in my opinion, it would really kind of retcon a lot of the first movie. Because I think a lot of problems of the first movie were just, for me personally, just the Jar Jar figure. And this would actually make it acceptable to me, that payoff.
Also, the Anakin kid character, that was horrible. That was horrible. Sorry.
What, the Anakin kid?
The Anakin kid was terrible.
I actually
No.
thought his acting was not terrible for a child actor, I will say.
It wasn't terrible,
Yeah.
but it was pretty bad.
Jake Lloyd is the story of Jake Lloyd has been really tough to kind of like absorb after, and I think that he did a fine job as a kid thrown into that position. There was a little documentary that came out, I think it's like 10 minutes long on YouTube, about the kid who was the runner-up for Anakin, and I would encourage everyone listening and everyone here to go and watch that, because it's quite hard on those kids, and both of them respectively. So I give Jake Lloyd all the credit in the world for his performance.
So you're saying there could have been 2 Anakins, though?
I'm not starting this conspiracy.
Well, I'm going to start
Yes.
somewhat of a conspiracy along these lines. Han, you know what this is, right?
I think I know what you're getting at, yeah.
Yeah. So I threw up 2 pictures here real quick. I'm going to explain them for the audience listening. The first picture is, I think, from the first minute of episode, or it's from really early on in episode 4, where it's Luke and Han Stormtrooper outfits of Chewbacca. Second picture is in 1 minute later in the movie, same scene. Can you spot the difference between these 2 pictures? Han, any ideas?
Well, they're standing in an elevator. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm struggling.
I'm gonna direct your attention, Sav. Look at their heights.
Yeah.
It seems like the shorter one, the one on the right, who is Luke, suddenly grew a nice foot.
I don't know about that.
I mean, it's
In the second photo?
yeah. If you look at the second photo, he is obviously taller than he was in the first photo.
I don't know. I think it could just be the angling of the camera and stuff. Also, I take this with a... Okay, I'll let you continue.
Okay, so my basic point is that there's this theory called Bigger Luke, where if you're watching especially the original trilogy, there are several points in this original trilogy where Luke, when compared to Han on screen, suddenly seems shorter or bigger compared on the scenes. So this has led to a lot of speculation by the keener-eyed individuals who have been viewing these movies. They're split into 2 camps, the inch Lukers and the centilukers. So the inch Lukers believe there's about a 2 to 3 centimeter height discrepancy, so an inch. The centilukers believe that there's a 1 centimeter height discrepancy between Luke Prime, which is the original Luke, and bigger Luke, who is slightly taller. Regardless, they all agree that there's a bigger Luke and our original Luke. Are you following?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I didn't want to leave you guys behind. And this is supported not only by a few scenes, but a few other scenes, as well as some dialogue. So I'll run you through a few of the more notable ones. There's obviously a few scenes of pictures where it's clearly demonstrated via some immaculately placed lines, which do not screw around with camera angles whatsoever, that Luke looks shorter and taller in certain scenes, especially compared to his co-actor, Harrison Ford.
So for the viewers at home, there's 2 pictures of Luke Skywalker standing next to Han Solo, and our lovely Simon has drawn some lines on them, which show a little bit of difference. Like he looks slightly shorter in the top picture, as opposed to the bottom picture. But I mean, these are Simon's lines we're talking about, so.
These were drawn by a completely valid internet source, not me. I'm just gonna say.
They look like yours.
Regardless, there is in certain scenes height discrepancies. Moreover, some dialogue supports this. Do you remember the line Obi-Wan says, Sav, of "You've taken your first step into a larger world" from A New Hope?
Okay.
It could be a subtle hint at the height difference.
I thought that you were going to say about Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia.
Yep,
Okay.
that was my second piece of evidence, where she says, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" It's getting pretty suspicious here. Even more so, I don't know how suspicious this one is. This is a bit of a stretch. But when they first arrive in Cloud City, Lando gives Luke an extremely weird look, which some people are like, he's a good eye. He must know that Luke is taller in this scene than he's supposed to be. So take it that way you will. And finally, this is the one that really, somewhat sealed the deal for me. Sav, tell me, you're a Star Wars fan. What's the name of Luke's childhood best friend who convinced him to join the Rebels?
Wedge Antilles.
The other one.
The other one?
Yeah.
The other childhood friend that Luke had that short... Oh my gosh, am I being an idiot right now?
It's a close
There's
friend.
another one?
Yeah, there's two. Han, do you know this one?
I just know Wedge Antilles too. That's like my
The other one
piece of Star Wars.
was called Biggs Darklighter.
Oh, yeah. Biggs. Biggs.
Okay.
I do know Biggs, but the last name, yeah.
Isn't that a suspicious name to give in a movie where there's height discrepancies between two Lukes?
Oh my god.
What? It's a good theory.
Why? All right, keep going.
Oh,
Keep going.
Okay, sorry. No, I just Googled Biggs Lightyear. I know the dude.
Yeah, I told you, it's a suspicious name. So there's two main hypotheses why this happens. The first one is called the canon Luke hypothesis, which blames us on the canon story, which actually says that there's two Lukes in the Star Wars universe. Why this is, and I quote from the website I got this from, a hotly debated topic amongst theorists. So, there's some controversy here.
Of course it is.
Three main reasons I've found. Firstly, Luke was cloned. And the official reason they list is, you'll never guess this one. It's because Uncle Owen wanted an extra helper on his farm. So, if you have one Luke, why not have two? A little cloning won't hurt, right?
That is the dumbest reason ever. I love it.
It's credible if you believe farmers.
Well, I mean, if you do have cloning like that, you can. I guess it makes sense that. All right, well, I could hire a farmhand, or I could just clone a second nephew.
We can't afford to send you off to school, Luke, and we can't afford to not have you on the farm, but we'll clone you, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, that might be a bit. Regardless, the second one is not that Uncle Owen cloned him, but that R2-D2 or Obi-Wan cloned him because they knew he was important and wanted a replacement in case he died. Some even extend this theory to say that R2-D2 can teleport Luke in and out of scenes because, Prime Luke is a bit bigger and stronger, so, advantages. And the third reason, which I love, is that Luke can resize himself due to the Force. And this would explain stuff like bad Stormtrooper aim, because
he's dodging it by shrinking.
Exactly. And it would also, explain his jealousy and stuff. So like when Leia's like, "Oh, aren't you a bit shorter?" He's like, "Well, look at me now," and he grows a bit. Are you not buying this at all?
It was just a little cringy when you were talking about Leia being like, "Ooh, you're short," and then Luke suddenly grows.
Well, he's basically a teenage boy in these series, right? Come on.
Yeah, with a sister.
But if he can use the Force to grow, why would he only grow like an inch? He's still shorter than Harrison Ford.
I don't know. I don't know.
He's like 10. So I searched it up. There's a 10 centimeter difference between Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford. So, and also, if you've seen this picture here, the top picture, you can see Luke's knee, which means that he's not standing up straight.
He's standing on one leg.
This is true.
Same height. It's called
he's just
being
meditating in a crane pose.
Anyways, the other theory. So I mentioned two hypotheses. The other hypothesis, the Hamill hypothesis, where Hamill was replaced by an uncredited Hamill lookalike for certain scenes for unexplained reasons.
So that was actually true though. So during the filming of Revenge of the Sith, Mark Hamill got into a bad car accident and he needed plastic surgery on his nose. So they actually had a stand-in double for Luke at times. But I knew that happened in Revenge of the Sith, not in A New Hope, which the evidence is based off of.
What, Revenge of the Sith? Luke wasn't in Revenge of the Sith, right?
Oh, sorry, not Revenge of the Sith. The Empire Strikes Back. Sorry, I'm being stupid.
All right.
I knew which one you meant, but yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was confused there for a second. It's like, when does Luke show up in Revenge of the Sith?
No, I'm being stupid. It was Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, so Han, what do you think of this one? What are you rating this? Because I think this is quite a creative one, I must say so.
I am speechless about a lot of these things. I mean, if you connect it to the Stormtroopers missing thing, it becomes so ridiculous that it might become plausible again, but not quite.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm giving this one a 2.
Okay, at least it's not a 1. Anyways, Sab, what do you think? Because at least you're not going to give me a 1 on this one, right?
Oh, I'm not. I'm going to give you a 0.
Oh, great. There is a height discrepancy somewhere, but whatever.
I will note that this theory was probably conjured up, like it probably originated before the prequels and before we knew what the Clone Wars really were, because with that context of what cloning is now, it looks even more ridiculous. Like back then, Obi-Wan there was just one throwaway line from Obi-Wan about the Clone Wars and how he fought with Luke's dad in it. And nobody really know what it meant. Like the word clone and how that came about didn't really show up again. So I guess it makes more sense if you see it like that, because then it's like, oh, well, clones are apparently commonplace, so why not?
Yeah. This theory, for the record, did develop the first in 1985, I believe.
Right, so...
It's been around for a while and has not been disproved yet, so...
I mean, I wouldn't put, like, production, if you've ever seen some of the documentaries for the original Star Wars film, that it's the production value on the sets were not great.
Yeah.
There's even a moment where Mark Hamill is running to congratulate like Princess Leia, and he goes, "Carrie!" and they kept that in the film. So yeah.
Okay, Han. Do you think we should do another conspiracy? So, because we're running pretty late in our timing, or should we start wrapping this up?
Do we have one? Oh no, we have 2 left. Yeah. So yeah,
we can skip 1 or 2. Also, we could mention Chewbacca's a Sasquatch one to link to previous episodes.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
okay.
I can do the last one in like 1 line or 1 or 2 lines or something, because it's just a cute story that I really like.
Yeah, we'll finish with that then. Yeah. Okay. I will say, for the record, I wanted to throw the Chewbacca's a Sasquatch one in there, but it turns out to be part of the extended universe. But can I quickly tell the story, because I really love this? So, in 2004, these guys wrote a book which is non-canon but still somewhat accepted, called Into the Great Unknown. It was a comic kind of thing, where Chewbacca and Han crash landed on a planet called Earth in the Pacific Northwest. Han got killed by the natives, is what they said. Chewbacca survived, but became the basis for the myth of the Sasquatch. And then 126 years later, Solo's skeleton is discovered by archaeologist Indiana Jones, who also meets the Sasquatch.
I would like that to be real.
I would like to see that movie. Much more than any other Star Wars spinoff.
That's the best of both George Lucas's 2 series there.
Yeah.
And all Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm. Han, do you want to... I'll flip to the last one we'll handle. I'll give the reins to you. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, all right. Well, just I don't know if you know about this one, but I think it used to be theory, and then it kind of got turned into a short story and made canon. But basically, it's the theory that this little droid you see on the picture, the red one on the right side... So you might remember it because it's in one of the first scenes of A New Hope. where so R2D2 and C3PO get dumped into the desert, and they get picked up by the Jawas, and they go to people to sell them droids. So then Uncle Owen and Luke want to buy some droids, so they go to buy these droids, and they actually buy C3PO, but not R2D2, and they want this one. And then this little red one explodes, and then they decide to get R2D2. So that's how it went. It seems pretty innocuous, but the theory is, which was, like I said, actually made canon later on, is that actually this was not an accident. That red little robot sacrificed himself to save the galaxy. Because, you know how robots can talk to each other? R2D2 talked to the red robot, who was called R5D4, and explained to him that he had some vital information about that on which the survival of the rebellion hinged, and as such, the survival of the galaxy. So, and the red robot agreed to help him in any way he could. And when he got chosen by Luke Skywalker and Uncle Owen, he realized that now was his time to do what he had to do to fulfill his destiny. So he blew himself up, and that caused him to pick R2D2 and also check R2D2's systems, which then causes Luke to find the Leia recording. So, yeah. The big hero.
I would say that, to be honest, this is the guy who saved the galaxy right here, and we should honor him like we haven't before.
You should give him one of those medals that they ended up giving.
They should have more exploded shell. One of those medals.
Yeah.
Actually, no, he survived. It's actually fun fact. What? It's actually canon. He survived because what happened was robots are apparently sentient and apparently don't die as easily. I mean, let's be honest. C-3PO got his head cut off so many times and he was fine. So that happened to this one too. So he reassembled himself, survived the attack by the Stormtroopers and the Jawas, because that happens in the movie too. And then he just wheels off to find the rebellion at some point, and he actually shows up in The Mandalorian. He's actually
really?
He's in The Mandalorian?
Yes, he is in The Mandalorian. There's one scene where there's like this little robot, which is exactly this robot doing a little thing of Tatooine. So it's actually canon that he survived.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to go back and find this little fucker.
It's a bit of a throwaway moment, but it's really cute. And also, just to finish it up, the last little thing that surrounds this theory, which might also be canon, I think it's another short story, is that actually this robot didn't talk to R2D2. He's actually a Force-sensitive robot, so he sensed the importance of R2D2, and therefore he blew himself up.
Yes. Yes.
I approve. I think this one's okay.
Yes.
I think that this was 100 out of 10.
Wow, thanks.
That's the best score we've ever got.
Well, Sav, the way we want to end is kind of rank these by how much we want them to be in the Star Wars universe. But do you have any thoughts if we should still do the ranking? Because I feel like it's pretty obvious how it's going to go.
Yeah, I think that this logo, what was his name? R5D4?
Yeah.
R5D4 is in a galaxy far, far away that needs to actually have his own spin-off TV series. This man's the myth and the legend. He's the man. He's the dude. He's number one.
He's the chosen one that will bring balance to the Force.
Exactly. He is the balance to the Force.
Nice.
He's gonna appear in the sequel series to help us all.
Yeah. He'll fight off Darth Jar Jar, right?
Yeah, Darth Jar Jar.
He'll be wheeled on, like wearing one of those brown Jedi cloaks and like clutching a little lightsaber in his little thingy, little grabby thing that R2D2 has.
Yeah. Okay, I think that about wraps up our grab bag special of Star Wars Conspiracies. We actually have enough left to do another episode if we want on this topic.
Yeah.
We'll see about that. Mainly, I also want to do this episode because I was still a bit tired out from my time travel from the time travel episode we did last week. I did a lot of research for that, so I'm like, I need something fun and quick. But I
appreciated the Star Wars episode.
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty fun too because it's relaxing sometimes and it's pretty low stakes as As Matt was saying in the other episode, the best conspiracies are the low stakes ones. But yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So I think with that, we'll start wrapping it up. Thank you for coming on, Sav. I've had a great time reconnecting again.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
If you want to hear more of Sav on this podcast channel per se, check out my old Canadian election episodes.
My specialty.
Yeah. Han, thanks for presenting a few of these. You're doing valiantly at this.
I hope you managed to follow along in my confused rambles, because I don't follow myself sometimes. So
You were
I
doing
try.
a good job.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, you, the listener, I'm pointing to you right now, please drop a subscription, drop a follow. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment. We love any support we get. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, let us know as well. Although I have a future one planned as well, and that should be in the description of this episode if you're still listening. And yeah, I think may the force be with you. Or is that way too nerdy to end an episode like this?
No, do it. May the force be with y'all.
Live long and prosper.
Han.
Finally
it's
showing my
good.
true colors.
Goodbye, people.
See ya.